I'd like to call the order the July 7th, 2011 Board of Adjustment meeting. Our first order of business would be to have approved the June 16th, 2011 meeting minutes, but in the absence of some members, we will wait till Mr. Allen, Mr. Baker, and I am present at a meeting, and we will defer the approval of those minutes till that time. Ask staff for continuance requests.
We have two items today. Case number one, item number one, case number 13415 is asking for a continuance to September 1st, and item number 8, case number 13244 is requesting an continuance to August 4th.
I would entertain a motion to approve the continuance of item number 1. Before we approve or discuss item number 8, I would like to make a statement, please. So, a motion for item number
1. So moved as to item number 1.
Second. Please register your vote.
We have protesters here on item number 8.
Yeah. Pardon me?
We have protesters here on item number 8.
Item number 1?
8.
Item number 8. Okay. Well, let me go ahead. If I might make a statement to all of you in attendance today on item number 1 or number 8. Before we consider this continuance request, I want to acknowledge that there is a tension and frustration regarding this property, and to further acknowledge that there may be unresolved issues that are beyond the scope of what Board of Adjustment will consider today. The application is regarding the back door and the porch, which are elements of the rear addition, which the Board approved on June 17th, 2010. We allowed 6 months to complete. Another 6 months was allowed, extending the effective date to complete the rear addition to June 17th, 2011, the date which is now passed. The application and the continuance request are for more time to complete the rear addition. This time I would invite the representative of the applicant to come forward. Your name
I'm here
and
for Ms.
address.
Colmia today. She had a doctor's appointment, and I believe that she has had that for some time and wasn't going to be able to get out of that. So I'm quite literally just carrying water for Ms. Colmia today.
State your name and address, please.
Jacob Rao. I'm an attorney in Oklahoma City. My office is located at 1309 North Chartel Avenue.
To make the case for your continuance request? Other than a doctor's appointment, is there any other justification for the continuance?
No, sir, there's not. Just the doctor's appointment of Mr. and Ms. Bowman's attorney.
Okay. Are you aware of the current state of construction and the status of the home?
I've received an update before I came from Ms. Colmia. The back porch and I believe that entire project, of which I have very little knowledge, is substantially complete. There is, I believe, a door that is still yet to be constructed, and there are some shingles on the new back porch that need to be replaced because of some problems with the underlying shingles. Other than that, I think the project is completed.
All right. At this time, I would invite the Dells, Mr. Dell, if you would like to approach.
Thank you. I didn't get the understanding exactly of why this was being requested to be put off until September, but this application was made by them, and I think that they would have known that there would have been a doctor's appointment if indeed that was the case. This gentleman works for Doug Friesen, if that means anything, because if you've all seen the materials that I furnished to you with regard to this, nothing was done on this particular project until I began sending emails back in March. So I can express that we're opposed to any kind of a continuance on the thing, but ask this commission to take whatever action is appropriate today. Thank you.
I would just like to state that I understand your objection to any request for continuance, but I would be inclined to consider a continuance to the August 4th meeting that was conditioned on the inspection of the property immediately, following this meeting, if the continuance is approved, and with a progress report again by that city inspector just prior to the August 4th meeting, documented with photographs and reported to this board by that inspector to document tangible progress on the completion of the rear addition. To the applicant, would that be acceptable to you?
I don't think that we would have any issue with that. Just to make sure, you were speaking faster than I was writing. That would be an inspection of the property immediately following this meeting, provided that the continuance request is approved, and an inspection from the city inspector to report on progress immediately preceding the August 4th meeting.
Right. The continuance would be conditioned upon having a city inspector look at the property immediately, following as soon as possible after this meeting, and just before the August 4th meeting, and documenting, the condition of the property now, the progress that you've made toward the completion of the rear addition just prior to the board meeting on August the 4th.
I wouldn't have any objection to that.
I guess the one question I'd have is, what progress are you aware of that has occurred in the last 2 weeks? What's going to occur in the next 2 weeks? What is being done out there to remedy this problem?
Mr. Stonecipher, I really do apologize for my lack of knowledge about this project, and to address what Mr. Dell had indicated. I believe that Ms. Colmia had a meeting with the board about the progress on the project itself and had written a letter confirming what she thought were her understandings of that meeting. And in that letter, I believe she said we are substantially complete, the door still needs to be fixed, and then this meeting was scheduled. So I don't think that, at least to Ms. Colmia's understanding, her action was going to put us on this docket. But as far as the project, I'm at a loss for the committee because this isn't something that I've been involved with. I know that from what I've been informed of, that the project is substantially complete, and there are the 2 issues outstanding, the placement of the back door on the new porch addition and a small area of the roof on that addition that still needs to be reshingled.
Is it fair to say that you do not know who the contractor is that's doing the work on this property?
No, I don't.
I kind of have a comment. I think that we've given you enough time. And this case has been before us a number of times. And the progress it's taken to date, maybe 4 or 5 years. And with that, I'm inclined not to even give you approve the motion for a continuance. You guys had plenty of time, and a doctor's appointment, I'm a lawyer too, that doesn't cut a lot of ice with me. She knew when she had the appointment. She sent somebody now that's not fully informed, and I think that's not a good practice, period. So it'll be hard for me to vote for a motion to continue.
The one thing I'd like to say about that, and I understand completely, is that if we do approve them and with this condition, that they'll be back on August the 4th and condition upon the inspections immediately after this meeting and before that August 4th meeting. We keep them accountable back to us, and we have a way of documenting and keeping track of the progress that they're making because, as you can tell from the contents of your packet, this has gone on for years. And, there have been efforts by the neighbors and the neighborhood and others to bring this to a resolution. So that
Why didn't you start the improvements at the beginning of the time period?
I'm sorry?
Why didn't the improvements begin at the start of the time period? You had 2 extensions to get that finished.
And Mr. Dunn, again, I'm sorry that I'm not fully informed about all of the facts in this matter. I can't answer that question for you, and I apologize.
I'll make the motion for the continuance with Mr. Allen's recommendations, which you have agreed to. But I also need you to agree to having someone here next time that's prepared and can answer our questions.
I would like to guarantee that to the committee, but largely that's out of my control. I will do everything in my power to make sure that somebody who's fully apprised of the situation is here, and I will certainly let everyone involved know that the committee has admonished me to crack the whip on all of them.
Based upon your representations, I'll make a motion to continue it to the August docket.
At this point, with no second, this request for continuance dies.
Mr. Dell, I'd like to have you come forward and
Thanks, sir. One of the questions that my wife just asked me is that, among other things, we didn't have any notice that there was a second 6 months extension on this because I've got copies of the minutes of the board from the June meeting as well as the October meeting and have no information at all that there was ever any notice. No notice was sent to us about any extension in the thing. Now, with regard to some of the questions I can answer for you, I've got pictures that were taken yesterday of this property, and I will give those to you. They're not ones that I submitted earlier because they were taken yesterday. But that shows the status of the side of the house that I can see. The other thing is that no matter what anybody else will tell you, and the court, this group can go back through its records and find out that from the Historical Preservation Commission, among other things, that the house, the windows were required to be the same as the windows that were on the original back of the house. When you see the pictures and see the pictures that I have submitted to you, you will see that they are not anything like those pictures. If they're going to make this house conforming to the historical preservation requirements, they're going to have to do a lot of work between now and August, whatever it is. So I would ask the commission to take a close look at whether or not they have at any time conformed with the requirements that this board has levied on them with regard to the motions of both the June and the August meeting, as well as what the Historical Preservation Commission has levied upon them to do. They haven't done it. I don't know what the remedy is. I know that it's unlikely that you would follow my request to have them tear it down, but that's what I would like to see. In any event, even if you don't want to do that, I think it behooves the commission as well as support for the ordinance to require them to at least follow the ordinance. Thank you.
You would approve an August 4 extension?
Well, I don't approve of it. My wife wanted to know why you want to do an August 4th extension. I understand that you all want to keep control over it, and that I understand that's what you want to do. We'll be back there August the 4th. That's what you set it for.
Let me just say this. I drove by the house today, and I was very disappointed.
I'm sorry?
I drove by the house today, and I was very disappointed in its condition.
The front porch has never been changed since it fell down several years ago, and this project has been going on for approximately 7 years. Now, you ask who the contractor was? His name is John, and he has been showing up there daily in a pickup truck, and he's the one that's responsible for what supposedly is a really beautiful inside. And I felt sorry for him for having to go out in the heat and start these repairs on the outside of the house. But this shows you the condition of the work that has been done since I started sending emails back in March, because nothing had been done up to that time, nothing. And the front porch is still the same way it is. The windows, as you can see in those pictures that I've provided on the side, are non-conforming also. We don't ask for a lot in the Mesta Park. We do ask that they try and maintain that same standard that we fought a long and hard time for, that finally was put into our neighborhood in the early 90s, about 1992. It has been very good for us. It's made our neighborhood attractive to people coming in, as well as maintained our property values. This, as I point out to you in the letter I sent, has really hurt my property values, and I'm not happy about it.
At this time, I would like to invite Catherine Montgomery from the city to step forward.
I do have a question about the inspection. If we have the city inspect, are we going to have historic preservation inspect? Is that the idea? Or are we going to have somebody show up that's the normal inspector for the city?
I think my intention is that we have a city inspector go out and document the state of the rear addition right now.
I'd like to have historic go out and take another look at it and tell us what has not been done properly.
I was actually out there this morning taking some photographs to see what the progress was.
Catherine, would you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Catherine Montgomery, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Oklahoma City. And the project is not completed. I haven't done an inventory of each and every item that is not completed or non-conforming to the certificate of appropriateness. Well, no, that wasn't issued to the board's order. I haven't done that yet, but I have these photographs that I can send to you. I don't know what you want.
Well, could you comply with Mike's request that in addition to a city inspector, a representative HP was present at the time of the inspection now and the inspection just prior to August the 4th?
That inspector doesn't work for the city anymore.
Can someone from your office go out to the property today or shortly thereafter, and then again before the August 4th hearing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And you can come back prepared telling us what the improvements that have been made and whether they conform and what is to be done in order to make the property conforming as improved.
Yeah, now are you thinking that work would be able to continue from today till August 4th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, Mike's made the point, and I agree that, the board has been very generous in terms of its allocation of time, and if this continuance is approved and conditioned, the way we've talked about, it is not 30 days to do nothing. It is, I would hope that as, progress would be made on the completion of this project is a sign of good faith not only to this board but the city and the neighbors in the neighborhood.
Well stated. I move to make a motion to extend to August 4 or a continuance until August 4 in this matter.
Second.
Please register your vote. You are continued.
I have one question for the committee. Will I need to make sure that somebody's there for the inspection, or is that a visual inspection from the exterior? Does somebody need to be there, is my question.
Well, the scope of our work is the exterior of the building, so unless staff indicates differently, I would say that
You're free to have whomever you wish.
I'm sorry?
You can have somebody there if you wish.
My concern was whoever comes up being able to do their job, and if it's an exterior inspection, then I guess they'll be able to. So I need to
I
inform
believe that Catherine is indicating that you have full access to the part of the house that you need to see without the homeowners. Am I correct?
Yeah, of course, the work that is evaluated is only on the exterior, so there isn't any need for any interior access. There is a gate that separates the backyard from the side yard, so it's not locked. One can get in there, but it's just a matter of having somebody know that a person is going to be there for that purpose.
and I'll pass along that information. I appreciate the
All
committee's
right, thanks.
consideration.
Thank you.
May be excused.
You may.
Item number 2, case number 13428, request of Adams and Associates for a variance to the maximum sign size, display surface area, and sign height located at 7628 to 7654 West Reno Avenue.
Invite the applicant to come forward. Name and address, please.
My name is Tom Rumps. I'm Senior Vice President, Horizon Group Properties, the owner and developer of the shopping center. My location's in Muskegon, Michigan, 5000 Hakes, H-A-K-E-S Drive.
You had a representative here at our last meeting, and you have a new application, and I would invite you to go ahead and take us through your application and the justification.
Okay, thank you again for your reconsideration of this. The application has been modified to the extent that we've put forth some additional information pertaining to what we are requesting. Basically, there's 3 areas. The first item is the attached signs at the property for tenants that are not in specific buildings. And if you're familiar with the property, it's configured in what we call racetrack configuration, 8 separate buildings with the intent is to maximize the shopper experience, maximize the length of stay on the property and the retail sales. And they will go through the interior of the property where the storefronts are located. So there's 2 buildings that are facing the Interstate 40, and those are what we refer to as buildings 7 and 8, and that's what's up on the attachment. If you can see that configuration there, which is Exhibit A on our site plan. And what we've requested is for Building 7 that we would have the ability to have 744 square feet of signage on that building, and the code has a permissible amount of 625 square feet. That code is based on a building that's 125 lineal feet, and our building is actually 377 lineal feet. So although we're exceeding the parameters of the code, the size of the building was not really, I don't think, contemplated within the code. It's almost 3 times as large. In addition, the building itself is set back much further from Interstate 40. The code was based upon, get this right, sorry, I think the building could be right at the property line or right on the Interstate 40 property line, and our building is actually about 300 linear feet from that. So again, the intent of the code, I think, was to make sure that you didn't have a very large sign right on the freeway, but the fact that we're set back quite a distance provides us that different visual impact. I kind of jumped into I jumped from item 1 into item 2, but I think it's a pretty similar.
That's fine, and at the last meeting, the thing that was under discussion was your freestanding signs.
Correct. So in terms of the freestanding signs, it's actually what I would say a fairly similar aspect in the fact that our sign is about 285 feet from the property line. And if you look at the code, it's 50 foot is the height that signs can be placed, and we're looking at about almost 60 feet to the top of our tower there. And if you look at the towers that we have, they're actually, I think your ordinance, I'm not trying to interpret it exactly for you all, but was pertaining to freestanding monument kind of signs that would be right on the property lines. Again, this is something that's going to be about 285 feet from the property line. You don't have as much of a dramatic effect as some other signs. If you would look at exhibits here, and I'll go to the last one, sorry about the order here, but if you look at Exhibit L, which is the Bass Pro sign, when you go downtown through Interstate 40, that sign, Bass Pro, is right on I-40. It feels like you can reach out and touch that fish right as you drive by it. It's a great sign. I love Bass Pro. But again, it gives you a different visual impact. If you've had an opportunity to drive by our center that's under construction, you can see our towers are a lot further back, and they don't have that kind of right-in-your-face visual that you're going to see with other signs. Exhibit I is a similar one that's about 3 miles to the east of us on MacArthur Drive. It's Westgate Marketplace. Again, it's a 55-foot tall sign directly on Interstate 40, and the signage is looks like it's probably right about 52 to 53 feet above that limit. Again, being directly on I-40 versus us being set off 285 feet, I think you have a very different effect there. And J is another sign that you'll see at that property. And then the last exhibit we had was Exhibit K, which is just west of the site on Morgan Road, and that's a Love's sign that's at 60 feet tall. So again, there seems to be some precedent if the properties are set back from, if the signs are set back from the property lines, that the visual impact isn't as significant. We had originally contemplated having 4 tower elements on the property. I think the code permits 10 kind of freestanding signs for a property of this size and nature. We'd be willing to limit ourselves in the future to 4, 2 of the existing, and then possibly 2 more that we had contemplated with the original plans. Frankly, I don't know if our plans would ever be to put that into a future expansion or phase, but we'd like to have that ability as we expand the center and have more tenants in the area there. To four signs, right? Those are the tower elements. We also have 2 monuments which are more wayfinder signs. One is on Reno Avenue, and the other is on Council Avenue, or Council Road, I should say.
I have a question. The reference signs, were those were built or placed there before the change in the sign code? Is that correct?
The tower signs?
No. The ProBass and the signs that are referenced as far as down the road or fairly close to this site.
Yeah, they've all been there for quite some time.
Yeah, I think they're before the change in the code. But one issue is when the code changed, was the 50-foot pre-code change or post-code change?
The 50-foot is it's still 50 feet along a divided interstate.
Okay, so we didn't have any change as far as height.
One thing I noticed when I drove out and looked at your east and west exposure off of Interstate 40, and I know your concern about the freestanding signs is for eastbound traffic. And by the time you get to the point where you can even see the towers, I mean, if you know where to look for the towers when you're eastbound, you're essentially, past the point of no return in terms of Council Road. And I am sure that you've got billboard signage, planned, because that, I think, is what is actually going to drive, traffic off the interstate in both directions to your outlet mall. The other thing I would say, too, is, the benefit of the signage on the towers, to me, primarily is for people that have found their way onto your property. And that, limiting your signage to 50 foot in compliance with the statute is actually, may make it easier for those folks to not have to duck and out of their windshields and to actually, have better visibility of the tenants in your mall.
Well, one of the things that we see at our properties, and one of the main reasons we picked this location as well as being within the city limits, is that you have a high degree of traffic driving back and forth. And you may have someone driving to the, a softball tournament, the women's softball tournament, that drive by the site as their way in. And this is something that they're going to be seeing if it's at a better elevation. So they'll know that it's there. And again, with the traffic going both ways, that people have the opportunity to see this thing.
But if they're, particularly when they're headed eastbound, they're going to see it when it's too late to exit at Council Road. And they can exit it at Rockwell and double back, or they can exit at MacArthur and double back. I don't see, and the other thing, too, is the setback away from the interstate is so substantial. Your signs, there's no way you can make those signs large enough that anybody, when you're driving, you can glance over and you can get a sense that it's there and we want to go there. How do we get there? But for you to effectively drive traffic to that facility, you're going to use billboards as traffic approaches from the east and the west to let them know that it's there and to remind them of what the proper exit is going to be.
Right. I understand that, but there are people that, that may drive by a property 2 or 3 times before stopping, and that they see a coach sign up there, and they, at the second or third time they stop by when they come to visit the city, they may make it a point on the 4th time that they know they want to stop on the way there. So, it's part of signage is a data point, but there's a little bit of a
And I understand
of a gray area, and it's hard to factor.
But if they're eastbound, their chances of making the Council Road exit are essentially nil. They're going to have to double back anyway.
Well, I understand that, but my point really is that when people come to visit the city multiple times, so they may drive by it one time and see the sign and not stop that trip, but when they come back the next time, then they very well could stop.
But I don't see, asking for the signage, and, I don't see that moving the signs a few feet higher on those towers is going to appreciably benefit you.
Well, Exhibit F is a depiction of where the signs are and where those would be. So part of the challenge would be we just really would lose the ability to put any signs on it because they're not going to be able to be seen at all from the east side. So I think that's that's.
And right now, I assume the coloration of those signs is what it's going to be. It's kind of it's a reddish tone and a gold, and it's not highly visible. And if you're you should be paying attention to your driving, and if you happen to look over and see those signs, it would be incidental anyway. And there are many other distractions along that stretch of highway. So I appreciate what you're trying to do. I just, and Mr. Allen, Mr. Baker, who are not here today, had real objections at our last meeting to the variance request over 50 feet.
I have an objection. I'm not in favor of allowing. I don't see how you have a hardship to justify it. I mean, bluntly, the way you market stuff and all that really doesn't have anything to do with us, especially with respect to a new project. Maybe with the other 2 tower signs you install subsequently and build, maybe you'll have enough face labeling to provide the signage you need on those, and you don't need the additional 10 feet on each one of them.
Well, part of what we want to do is make the project flow and have it, and that's why we integrated these towers and these signs within the shopping center. We didn't want to put a separate tower on Interstate 40. It makes it which we could have done and put a 50-foot tower right there, which I think would have been much more intrusive than what we've done with the shopping center here.
And I think, we've discussed the freestanding towers. Are there any comments from anybody else on the board about the signage on the side of the buildings or the request for the monument sign on Council Road? If not, I would call for a motion if it's appropriate.
My opinion on the monument sign, I'd move to approve that signage.
Second.
And I think we need to vote this, up and down if we want to. I mean, the variance request includes all these elements, so if you want to take exception to the approval on the towers, we can do that, and if you want to approve the signage on the buildings
Okay.
and the signage, the monument sign.
All right.
Am I correct? That's the appropriate motion.
Well, I'd move to approve all of those other than the height of the towers, and those towers would be limited to 50 feet in accordance with the code.
And we want to clarify, I think it's the signage on those towers that would be limited to 50 feet, not the overall height of the towers.
Correct, right. That's right.
Second.
Please cast your vote.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item number 3, case number 13429, request of the City of Oklahoma City for a variance to the minimum 2.5-acre lot size requirement and the 100-foot setback requirement to permit an above-ground fuel storage tank located at 1821 Southeast 22nd Street.
It's going to be a tough case.
Name and address, please.
My name is Bob Boyster. I do work for the City of Oklahoma City, Parks and Recreation Division, Grounds Management Department, and we're seeking variances on those two items. We're to install a 520-gallon above-ground storage tank, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
If board members have questions after the applicant has spoken and responded to your questions, we do have someone from the public that's asked to be heard. Questions? Mark?
No, I don't.
I would invite Mr. Thompson to come forward then. If you would, for the record, your name and address, please.
My name is Greg Thompson, Post Office Box 94401, Oklahoma City, 73165. I own the property right across the street from the maintenance barn and have for about 10 years. And first of all, I want to say that the city is a good neighbor. We've never had any problems with them and don't anticipate this time to have any problems with them. Out of courtesy, I went over to speak to one of the men in the office the other day about the proposed use. And the real objection I have to this whole thing is the word fuel. It covers a lot of areas. And I certainly don't want gasoline stored above ground in that area because we have a problem at night and on the weekends with vandalism. Now the city has a storage area that's fenced and it's electronically controlled, so I feel safe that their property would be fine. But if we open this door for fuel to be stored in that area, up and down the street, I think it could be a real hazard. Storing gasoline above ground is a lot different than storing diesel fuel for a lot of obvious reasons. But what I'd like you to do is put in here the word diesel fuel if you're going to approve this.
Let's give the applicant a chance to respond to your objection.
That's our main intent. It's going to be bio-blended diesel fuel. This is what it's for. It's for our off-road mowing equipment. And at this time, we have to go to retail outlets to purchase our fuel. We have trouble finding biofuel for the green purpose, and they blend it for trucks, and it's not quite adequate for mowing equipment. So we want to get from our wholesaler an actual blended diesel fuel, biodiesel, that will meet our need. It will be biodiesel. It will be secure. We have security fees.
So based on that, Mr. Thompson, that's acceptable?
It's limited to what he just said. I'm happy with it.
Okay.
Happy to have you.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion to approve the variance,
I'll condition on biofuel only.
conditioned on biofuel only.
Second.
We can agree with that.
Please register your vote. You are approved.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 4, case number 13430, request of Edmond Public Schools for a variance to the requirement that off-street parking or loading spaces shall be located no closer than 20 feet to any lot line abutting a residential district located at 18101 Northwestern Avenue.
Your name and address, please.
My name's Kevin Williams with JHBR Architects, 729 West Sheridan, Oklahoma City.
Would you like to explain your application and your request?
On the property that you see there, the R1 subject property, we'd like to add a parking lot to the south side of that property. And in order to get a parking lot in there that is parking spaces on both sides so we can maximize the area, we're just over 10 feet into the adjacent property. I believe the code states that we can't be any closer than 20 feet to residential property. You can see from the staff report that it's a multi-use property that's adjacent to us, multi-family residential property, apartments, and their parking lot is currently up against our property line within 10 feet, but there's also an 8-foot brick fence there that separates the two properties. So we're asking for a variance so we can maximize our parking spaces in there. It is.
Move to approve.
Got a motion and a second. Please register your vote. You are approved.
Yeah, thank you.
Item number 5, case number 13431, request of JHBR Architects for a variance to allow parking and maneuvering in the public right-of-way located at 2700 Southwest 40th Street.
Name and address, please.
Jack Joyner with JHBR Architects, 729 West Sheridan. Today we're seeking variance to provide on-street parking to the school side of Van Buren Elementary for Oklahoma City Public Schools. City code does not currently allow on-street parking, but we have, as you see from the sketch, a 4-classroom addition and a gymnasium addition that is taking up a good part of an already very restrictive site. So in order to keep as much site as possible for children in the playground area, we're looking to do the on-street parking at this site.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please register your vote. You are approved.
Thank you.
Item number 6, case number 13432, request of McDonald's for a variance to permit a non-accessory sign to be located on commercial developed property located at 12121 Northwest Expressway.
Invite the applicant to come forward. Your name and address, please.
My name is Roan Bird. I represent BMF Holdings, the developer on the site, in a joint ventureship with a Colony Point Investors, LLC. We were under a semi-time crunch on this deal, so if I could I just present a couple of, an actual rendering of the sign that we're
Sure.
looking to approve.
May we retain these afterwards?
You guys can keep them.
That's what I mean, yes.
Thanks.
So the proposed location of the sign is right there at Northwest Highway and Piedmont Road, am I right, on the
Yes.
southwest corner of the property?
Yes, sir, which is an approved location per Roadstar and per the zoning ordinance.
And the convenience store is the one that fronts Northwest Highway, and the McDonald's actually
Is on Piedmont Road.
on Piedmont Road? Part of the staff report notes that if we approve this today, it would double the number of freestanding accessory signs, and there may be a desire to condition the approval, if we consider that only one freestanding sign be permitted for McDonald's, and it would, I guess, be the shared sign. between the convenience stores.
Correct, yes, sir.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, it
That
is.
one sign would be the only freestanding sign?
Yes, it is. Excluding the directional sign
Yeah. Into the property?
into the property owner.
Okay.
With that condition, I'd move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please register your vote. You are approved.
Thank you.
Item number 7, case number 13433, request of ES Properties for a variance to the required number of parking spaces and the landscape buffer, and to permit a single-story building located at 4400 Southwest 15th Street.
I'd like the applicant to come forward.
My name is Eddie Scott. I'm the owner of ES Properties. My address is 12012 Rivendell Drive, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We are requesting a variance for 3 items: the height of the building, the buffer zone, that's a landscape buffer zone, and the, what was the third one? The parking requirements. We have provided that information to the review folks, and that has been reviewed. The property is a very small piece of property, and because of the, it's 1.3 acres total, because of the size of the property, and particularly because of the setbacks and restrictions and buffers, we lose about 42% of the buildable area or usable area. We intend to occupy the space. It would be an office building for our company. We are a design-build contractor that does work for the federal government all over the country, and we don't really do a lot of work in the state of Oklahoma, but I've been in the construction business here for about 40 years. Spent 28 years at Wind Construction Company, and then I started SGS 12 years ago. That would be the occupant of this building. So we're asking for the permission to build a single-story, approximately 6,000 square feet, and that we reduce the number of parking spaces. Right now, we operate with 11 spaces. That's all we need. Our design shows a total of 24, plus we have some overflow opportunities on the street, which is also on our property, on this piece of property. And then the other variance that we're requesting is the landscape buffer, that we not be required to put all of the landscaping out there that is required, because it is a considerable setback to our property, and we think it would obstruct the view of our building to be able to, if we had to do that. So that is our variances that we requested.
I would note, too, that the Riverfront Design Committee met earlier today, and I guess you appeared before them, and my understanding is that there were no objections from them.
Even on the landscape?
My understanding is there were no objections, and that would include parking, the variance on height, and landscape.
The parking, the code requires it all be side and back, and we've done that, but it's just because of size, we can't put parking in the landscape buffer. There's really restricted where we can put parking, so we've maximized the parking, plus we do have an opportunity for additional parking on the street, the next street, which is a private street that is on our property, so in the event that we need it. But right now, we operate with 11 spaces. We show, I believe, 24 or 28 on our design.
Just so I'm clear, the staff report says that the landscape plan provides for twice the landscape points. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We provided I don't know the total points, but we provided a landscape design for review, and we hired a landscape consultant to review the codes and try to meet that to the greatest extent possible. It's very well landscaped.
I'd also point out in your staff report, the Department of Airports has no objection to the proposed change, but your property is, I guess, in the flight path, and there's some other considerations there, and I'm sure that you're aware of those.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
One other thing I might add, the buildings adjacent to us is a Highland Dairy facility and a Chili's restaurant. They're both single-story. we're just asking to be able to do the same thing.
This time I'd make a motion to approve the variance.
Pardon me, before we do that, I'm sorry, we have a protester that is asked to appear, and so I would invite Mr. Wilkes to come forward, please.
Apologize.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Jerry Wilkes, 70 North Main, 73107. We have Riverport Development, a PUD of approximately 50 acres, just a little ways to the right of this property, just where the road begins to come up. And we spent many months trying to get this PUD approved. It has been approved. We tried to get parkings changed. We couldn't get it done from the river overlay. We tried to get landscape buffers changed. We couldn't get it done for over the riverlay. So when we got notice of this, we went to our architect, engineer, also people who represented us with the riverfront overlay, and we said, should we protest this or go along with it? Because the Riverfront Authority wouldn't do anything for us in any of these on zoning. So we were advised to protest it, and that's why I'm here. And I'd like to show you just a brief picture of what we have.
While you're doing that, could I ask if he was denied a scenic overlay for his proposed plan, does he have recourse or what that recourse is? Do we know?
He did have, he was approved?
Could you step back to the microphone? Were you approved by scenic overlay or denied?
We were approved.
Okay.
Here's our PUD.
Okay. But wait, but you're here today because you were not approved as...
No, we're here today because we were advised that if this were approved, it would hurt the value of our development, which is going to be a sizable development.
Because you were not approved for the sort of variances that this applicant is asking for.
No, we're not, absolutely not. We're approved for strictly the scenic river overlay. That's it. But there were places when we were trying to get our zoning that we'd like to have changed the landscape buffer and we'd like to change the parking, but we were refused.
And the landscape buffer, were you willing to provide double the landscape requirements of the code?
I'm sorry?
Did you offer up more landscape than required by the code?
No.
So you didn't really negotiate in the same manner that this applicant has?
Not with the Board of Adjustment. We were talking to the Planning Commission.
Well,
and our architect and our people dealing with the Planning Commission and the riverfront overlay, it wasn't before the commission, it was the people at the city is who we were dealing with.
well, they did too. That's why they're here today. And that's what this board's, that's the function of the board.
I understand that. But I was advised by our people, since we have a sizable investment already made in this, and it'll be a very sizable investment when it's developed, that we should object to anything, and this does change three different aspects of the scenic river overlay.
But you didn't offer up the additional landscape to avoid the setback requirements as this applicant has with planning?
What I just showed you is...
So you didn't really do that?
No.
Okay.
No, because we were told they wouldn't accept it.
All right, so thank you for your comments.
Thanks.
I guess I might add that the major difference that I see is he's talking about 50 acres, and here we've got less than about 30,000 square feet total, which is two-thirds of an acre. So I have a lot less opportunity to do things on this parcel.
Understand.
Move to approve.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Please register your vote. You are approved.
Thank you very much.
Item number 9, case number 13434, appeal of Usman Rashid regarding the decision of an administrative official to deny a certificate of compliance for a retail package store located at 1406 North Lottie Avenue based on a determination that the retail package store is located within 300 feet of church property.
Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
Jim Merz, M-E-R-Z, 1330 North Classen Boulevard, Suite 301, Oklahoma City, 73106. I represent Mr. Rashid, and we delivered a package this morning, and the first 2 pages were the most significant part. But what happened is on April 4th of 2011, Mr. Shadid made a request for approval from Oklahoma City for a retail package store, and the correct address is 1410, not 1406. That's a vacant area in the building. This was measured from the northwest corner of a church on 13th Street. There's a parking lot there, west of the church. And it was short of the 300 feet required by ordinance and by statute. And the entrance, which is the north, which occupies, or the retail credit package store, occupies the north 38 feet of this building there on North Lottie. And it fronts, the south end of the building fronts on northeast 13th Street. The church, again, too, is on the opposite side of the street, about a block or so down to the east, but the parking lot. And a second measurement was made. I think Mr. Chambliss was there, made the second measurement, and the state made a second measurement, and then with the new entrance, I think you had 310 feet. That was approved. A certificate of compliance was issued. A state license was issued, taken back to the city, and all of a sudden, everything turned around. The license was marked void, and his certificate of compliance was revoked, and consequently, we have this appeal.
But your argument today is that you are in compliance with the 300-foot?
Oh, yes. As a matter of right. We're not seeking a variance. This is a matter of right here. And the question comes down to one issue. The city, first of all, adopted the position. There was a funeral home, and there was a chapel, and there was a church. I think my client had a meeting with Ms. Talley there, and the city's position was the chapel was a church right across the street to the immediate south, and that certainly wasn't 300 feet. It's right across the street. And then I got into the case. I sent a 1967 Supreme Court case from Oklahoma to the staffer for the city, and I received a call from, I believe it was Dan Brummett, with the city attorney's office the following day, and said, well, we're dropping the chapel. We're going to go to the improper, you don't have 300 feet. And so the issue is here, he's got a license for himself as a retail package store in the north 38 feet of this building. And the question is, that building, which he owns, which runs north and south, starting at 13th Street and Lottie, the building itself is on the opposite side of the street of the church. The church not being a chapel, but a church to the east and on the south side of 13th Street.
Well, I see that a license shall not be issued for a location on any city block where a school or a church is located, and it doesn't specify.
We're not on the same block. We're across. We have that ordinance that, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the ordinance there. It says, if you're on opposite sides of the street, you have to be, and what they do, it's a little confusing, the ordinance, but I don't disagree. The city simply moved the church across the street to the north side of 13th Street.
Well, then is it your contention that the measurement from the parking lot, that the parking lot is not a part of the church property?
No, it is. What my contention is, and forgive me, I'm trying to clarify this for your benefit, is that the term in the ordinance, it says retail package store. Then it uses the term premises. Then it comes down here and it says, for the purpose of measuring distance, property located on the opposite side of the street of a church or school. Here we're talking about a church. The building, true, it's on the opposite side of the street. The question is, what is meant by the term property? And our position is that 38 feet is what we're talking about in this case. That's the the proposed retail package store. Premises. Premises is clearly, as it used in the particular statute or ordinance, means the package store. Now, under words and definitions, the word premises can mean the package store. It can mean the whole building if the whole building is used to support or further the retail package store. So it all comes down to one word. What is it meant by the word property? That's what it comes down to.
Well, and part of what I consider is what the intent is, and I think, clearly the intent is for there to be reasonable separation between, a liquor store, a place that sells liquor, and a church and a school, and,
The liquor store fronts on Lottie Street.
Just make sure I'm clear. We're looking at Exhibit A up there on the screen. Can you see that, sir?
Sure.
And if we go from the beginning point to the point of the door, is that 135 feet?
Well, it's less than 300 feet.
Is that beginning point the property owned by the church?
No. Church across the street to the south, to the bottom of the page where it says church. Original measurement, and Mr. Chambers can certainly attest to this fact because he was there, was measured from the northwest corner of the church parking lot to the point of entry, and that was 310 feet. And the city did that, and I will assume Mr. Chambers is experienced, and certainly you've got him here because he is experienced.
He's entered a lot of liquor stores.
The way the ordinance reads is that when a church and a liquor store are on the opposite side of the street, you measure as if they were on the same side. So we just said, well, the parking lot, we flip it across the street, and that's where we began our measurement.
You don't get to count the street.
Now, you start and move along the street right-of-way.
Is the south half of the building going to be used for warehouse storage or any of that?
It's a convenience store, Checkers convenience store.
So it's leased out or whatever we do with that?
Yes.
Was the application originally made for the 1006 address?
I'm sorry.
Was the original application made for the 1406 address?
But 1406, it got turned around a couple places. 1406 is a vacant space in the middle of the store. And the measurement was to the 1410 address by the city and by the state. They made two measurements, and the first one was short.
I'm not going to defend the city necessarily. I'm going to ask the question then, really wasn't the application made in error and it should have been the 1410 address?
Well, if yes, somehow it got screwed up. I don't know. I didn't have anything to do with that. It was done.
So the city was rightful in the denial at the 1406 address?
Well, in truth,
you didn't meet the 300 feet.
He measured the 1410. He didn't measure the 1406.
Right, but that's only 10 feet, 310 feet. They're going to be short pretty quickly on the three. You're going to be less than 300 feet if you use the 1406 address.
If you use the 1406, that is a common error that both sides made. In fact, as far as what is his first name and what is his last name, got all turned around too. So, and I don't know who's at fault there.
I would, as we discussed this too, we have a protest letter from the Ronald McDonald House. Is there anyone here to speak as a representative of that facility? And I'd like to invite them to come forward too and just address them. Could you state your name and address, please, and come to the microphone?
My name is Susan Adams. I'm the Executive Director of Ronald McDonald House Charities located at 1301 Northeast 14th Street.
And we have a copy of your letter, but feel free to elaborate on your objection.
It has been our experience that in neighborhoods with packaged liquor stores, that it invites perhaps an element into the community and that is not conducive to the services we're providing for the community. We've been at this location for 27 years, since 1984, serving families. We provide for their basic needs, their food, laundry, et cetera, so that they can spend their time focusing on healing their families. And so the purpose in urging you to carefully consider this was really a feeling of what we feel makes a strong neighborhood, and wanted the opportunity to just share our opinion.
And you note that some changes have already occurred in the neighborhood, and I don't know how long that store has been at that location, but you're already beginning to notice some changes in the neighborhood as a result of the fact that they can buy beer and...
That is correct.
Okay.
We've noticed changes. We've noticed beer being introduced into the home. We don't allow cigarette smoking. We don't allow liquor in the home, and we don't allow drugs, obviously. That's against our policies that the families sign and agree to when they receive the opportunity to stay at our home.
Questions from the board? Thank you very much. You sure, man.
I had an opportunity to visit with this nice lady yesterday afternoon because she said in her letter, if you note, that Checkers only sells beer. And I pointed out to her, and she first denied making that statement, then I read her the letter, and then she got her letter and said, well, it was poorly constructed. And I pointed out they sell over 2,000 items of merchandise at the Checkers convenience store. And I don't have a right to, it was a friendly visit, it was not hostile. But we talked about things, and this, of course, she has a right to come down here, to be heard. And to that end, let me say this, in 50 years I've never had the privilege of coming down here. And this is my first time, and I'm certainly impressed. With that, I'll be quiet, unless you have further questions.
JJ, I have a question. If the application was made for the 1406 address, and then the certificate of authority, whatever the heck we're talking about here, if that's issued, was that issued for the 1406 address or the 1410 address?
I can answer that, was 1406.
Okay.
We're less interested in addresses than we are the actual measurement. But
Well, I know,
initially,
but the front entry to the address is what's significant.
initially, the liquor store was at the 1406 in the middle of the building, and we denied that location because it was within 300 feet. Then the applicant moved the door around to the north side of the building,
Yeah.
and we approved that location, but we measured it without considering the church on the same side of the street. Once we did that, it was back under 300 feet again, and we pulled back and denied it.
Yeah, my understanding of the statute, basically you got to eliminate the street when you do the measurement. In other words, from the parking lot of the church across the street, you don't get to count that footage.
Yeah, and that's
so you flip it to the next block, and then you measure from that distance. Really, it's the back. Effectively, it's the beginning point, as indicated here on that exhibit. So, do we have 310 feet or not to that entry, to what is proposed to be the retail package store?
Now, from where we measured to the door is under 300 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, got it. Motion to deny.
I have a motion and a second. Please register your vote. You are denied, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
If there is no other business before this board, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, register your vote. We are adjourned.
Thank you.